She was a tall, cool, brown-eyed beauty. A package of beautifully stacked curves topped off by a black, cascading, lustrous mane. She walked into my office 5 years ago, and I felt my universe shift. I pulled open my top left drawer of my desk, pulled out my bottle of Maker's Mark, poured a couple of short ones, leaned across and said, "Bourbon, miss?" She gave me a look I could have poured over a waffle. "My name's Miss Frail. I don't drink bourbon, and your tie's in the ashtray." So I started over. "Have a seat, Miss Frail. I'm Spade McCool, Private Eye. That was me back then. Yeah, my territory was the streets and the greasy slime balls that populate 'em in this part of town. And I never knew I had a heart until the Frail sleazed out the back door with it in her hip pocket. Dolores Frail was her name. Yeah, she wasn't like the others. No, there was no errant husband for me to tail. No peeping Tom milkman for me to pay off with hush money. No slab of backdoor side meat for me to run a credit and security check on. No, Dolores had something different. But 2 weeks of tetracycline took care of that. She had a big want, too. "I want a statue," she said to me. "A statue of a bird, McCool." "A bird?" I said. "Yes. This is no ordinary statue. This statue is worth more than Solomon's treasures. And I want it, McCool. I want it bad." Now you may ask me, what is it about a statue that makes it so valuable that grief and death and misery follow in the wake of its greed-shrouded travels? Well, this was no ordinary statue, no plaster cast. This statue was made out of real terracotta with shiny lead-based glazes in 2 colors. That's why, in my case files, this carries the title the Mauve and Chartruse Cockatiel. Dolores' father's grandfather had been involved in a cult back in ancient times in Santa Clara in the mid-1920s. An artist named Serge had been commissioned and brought to the Mansion Temple from the mystical village of Sausalito, and there he fashioned an image, a clay image, of the group's sacred totem, the Santa Clara Cockatiel. This piece was glazed with colors the same as California states, and it was then encrusted with dazzling zircon and lavished with turquoise and carnelian agate and rhinestones everywhere. And the bird's eyes were fashioned of a jewel that actually changed colors with the mood of the bearer of the statue. But the true value of this bird wasn't the phenomenal wealth of its encrusted stones. No, it was something else. Something more. Something sealed inside the statue itself and forever hidden within Serge's clay. That day, the first day she was there after she had left, I leaned back in my old swivel chair, and I seriously contemplated all the instructions and information that Dolores had given me. I had 15 C-notes sitting in front of me as a retainer, a room number of a waterfront hotel, And 2 names, just 2 names, the Fat Man and Wilmer. I cruised down to the Vance Gibson Hotel, a greasy cockroach heaven. I went up the stairs and down the hall and stood in front of room 312. I smashed my shoulder against the door 3, 4, maybe 5, even 6 times. And then the old detective brain shifted into high gear. I reached over, turned the knob, pulled it open. And then I walked into room 312 and into heavy action. I struggled to catch a knee between my thighs. I busted fat knuckles with my teeth. And then I tried that old karate trick I had learned in the Marines of falling to the floor and trying to mesh someone's boots in my rib cage. When I came to, Dolores was there. I kissed her harshly and went back out on the streets to find the Fat Man and Wilmer. Oh, I found him all right. The Fat Man was chief maintenance down at Vance Gibson Hotel. Wilmer was a chick selling Space Needle earrings down at the market on weekends. I know what you think. Me and a chick named Wilmer? Well, you can just forget that. I don't want you to think that I don't know how to... Well, I don't want you to think I don't know how to please a woman. Hell, I can write out a check as fast as the next guy. Wilmer went out and held up a UPS truck making a delivery to Nordstrom's. Fat Man's eyes glittered as she walked back into the room and unwrapped a package, and there sat before us the Mauve and Chartruse Cockatiel. Wilmer began to breathe lustily. The Fat Man began to sweat. And I shot 'em both with my Smith & Wesson special long barrel. And then Dolores walked into the room. Her eyes locked on the statue. She picked it up and smashed it to the floor, and there among the shards and the gems lay a key. Her eyes locked on it. She trembled, she quivered as she picked it up. She looked at me and said, "McCool, this key unlocks the door to pleasures undreamed of." I was curious. Then I found out. She told me. The cult had owned a luxury townhouse in San Francisco. That townhouse was still occupied, still luxury epitomized, and that key still fit the door. It was the West Coast hideaway of Bruce Springsteen. You can imagine how I felt. A tall, cool, brown-eyed groupie. "So long, McCool," she said, as she walked out of room 312. "Don't let the door bump you in the ass on the way out." So I shot her. Right through the place where her heart should have been. She died right there. I called the cops, and my old friend, Detective Lieutenant Wilhelm, arrested me himself. They took me down to precinct headquarters and booked me for murder 1. I went to trial, and it looked grim. I thought I was going to fry. Then I looked at the judge. He looked like my kind of man. I could tell he understood women. So I told him the story, much as I've told you. He looked at me and said, "McCool, I wish you'd told me this a lot earlier. You could have saved the taxpayers a lot of money. But that'll be a $5 fine, and Try not to let it happen again.